It's a thread. It's a thread that's woven through the very fabric of our national psyche. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of. Very good. You remember your high school civics class. Let's spend a few moments today exploring what behaviors and attitudes can optimize the probability that we human beings can be truly happy. Now, why should we do this? Two reasons. Several years ago, the Princeton Review did a survey of major colleges and universities to find out, on average, how happy their student bodies were. Guess which college scored the second most unhappy? Georgia Tech, you got it. Now, that's not all bad. The colleges where the degree is actually worth something, where you have to bust your butt to get it, obviously scored less happy. And the party schools, one to the northeast of here, which shall remain unnamed, the party schools obviously scored higher on this average happiness. But there's a second, more important reason we need to look at this. Studies done over the last 70 years, show that people who consistently rate themselves as happy have less minor illnesses like headaches and stomach aches and colds, and less major illnesses like heart attacks and strokes and cancer. And that's often called the mind-body connection. So since this is a health class, it behooves us to take a look at this, the mind-body connection. Because as we will see in this morning's class, happiness is rooted in the mind, and it affects the body. So we are going to look at this. Now, my name is Miller Templeton, and of the 70-odd years I've been alive, only 18 of them, the first 18, have not been associated with Georgia Tech. Just like you all, I was a student here at Tech back in the late 50s and the early 60s, becoming educated in physics, nuclear science, and nuclear engineering. Went to work for Tech in 68 and as assistant dean of students. And after 4 years, guess what? It became obvious my knowledge of protons, neutrons, quarks, gluons, and neutron diffusion equations was perhaps not the best background to help Tech students achieve their goals. So I went back to Georgia State University and became educated in counseling and psychology with a focus on young adult development. And it's from that background in psychology that this morning's symposium will be drawn, okay? I worked for Tech for 30 years and retired in 1998. And sports fans, what a ride those 30 years were. Absolutely fantastic. I had 7 jobs. One of the jobs was to run ORGT. I founded ORGT, Outdoor Recreation Georgia Tech, in its present form, and was its director, its outdoor recreation coordinator, throughout the 70s and part of the 80s. And in that capacity, did some amazing things, like led 5, count them, 5 raft and kayak trips down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. An incredible experience. I led 15 150-mile backpacks to wilderness areas of the American West. And my summum bonum, in conjunction with the ORGT, I took a sabbatical from Georgia Tech in the summer of 1982 and hiked the 2,170 miles of the Appalachian Trail in 87 days. Do the math. That's an average of 25 miles a day. Needless to say, back in those days, I was in pretty good physical shape. I had many other jobs during the time that I served for Tech, but one of them that gave me a lot of insight to what we're going to discuss today, I ran dorms for 35 years, 5 as a grad student, and then the 30 years I was employed. And I got to see hundreds and hundreds of students who were happy and hundreds of students who were not happy. And I got to observe the behaviors in both groups. And we're going to build that into this morning's lecture in part. I retired from Tech in 1998 on a Friday, June 12th to be exact, 1998. And guess what I did on Saturday, June 13th, 1998? I started hiking the 1,300 miles of the Appalachian Trail I'd enjoyed the most back in 1982. It was fantastic. I will confide in you that when I finished that 1,300 miles, I could have written Miller's Guide to the Bed and Breakfast Inns along the Appalachian Trail, right? Not the rough, rugged experience it was back in 82. And one peripheral thing, I served as assistant dean of students until the early 80s when I became director of OIE, the Office of International Education. And at this point, there was no study abroad at Tech except for Georgia Tech Lorraine, and it was only for mechanical engineers. I, with the help of a wonderful professor in EE named Art Koblas, created the Oxford program and then the Pacific program. And I led both of those programs for years and years and years, even after I retired. And so I've got lots of legacies sprinkled over Georgia Tech. I still serve, even though I'm retired, in several capacities. I serve as advisor to clubs and organizations. I serve as guest lecturer to classes and organizations. I serve as coach for students who have really big public speaking commitments, like graduation or the convocation, or more frequently, the verbal presentation for your senior project, which all engineering students have to do and some of the other majors as well. And I also serve as mentor to Tech students. So, that's a little bit about me. I need to know a little bit about you. How many of you folks are freshmen? Hands up. Anybody? We usually don't have many of these at this point in the health course. How about sophomores? A smattering. Juniors? A smattering. Seniors? Wow, a lot. Have you seniors save this course for last? You're going to graduate in August and you have to have this to graduate? Maybe, some of you. Now, this lecture will have a little tiny piece that is really directed toward your future happiness, seniors. So I'm warning you ahead of time. Also, this lecture will have a little bit of information directed at you sophomores about your future happiness as a student at Tech. Now, how many of y'all are in state, you're Georgia residents? Hands up. How many of you are out of state? Okay, we're not going to do this, but I could have said, if you're a Georgia resident, raise one hand, and if you still have your Hope Scholarship, raise the other hand. But we're not going to do that, okay? But we are going to address an aspect of your happiness as a student related to, if you're a Georgian, keeping your Hope Scholarship. That's really good. Now, how many of you folks are enrolled in the College of Engineering? Hands up. It looks like most of you. College of Science, Math, Chemistry, Physics. College of Computing, a smattering. Schiller College of Business Administration, one faithful holdout up there. The Ivan Allen College of Liberal Studies, a smattering. And the College of Design, Architecture, ID, Building Construction. Okay, you're normative. Vast majority, 75% of Tech students are engineering, and that looked like the appropriate show of hands. And part of this happiness lecture will focus on you engineering students, all of whom will have to give a verbal presentation for your senior project. And it's really important that you be happy when you do that. Okay. Now, you were supposed to have internalized the following knowledge for this class. Now, either you've got it stored between your ears or you have reference to it. Your Myers-Briggs personality type, your locus of control, your satisfaction with life score, and your hostility score. How many of you know those four metrics or at least have reference to them? Hands up. Should be everybody. Come on. Really important. And you need to know those 4 metrics in order to really appreciate some of the content of this lecture. And if perchance in the future you are watching this lecture again on the internet, those 4 references will be on my web page. Right now, there'll be information posted on the class web page after the lecture about much of the content of this entire presentation. So you'll have access to it. But if you're watching this on the internet, it'll be on the Miller Templeton web page. Okay, now, I know a little bit about you, and you know a little bit about me. So, long, long ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was leading a backpack for ORGT. These weekend backpacks go as follows. You meet at ORGT Saturday morning, hop in the cars, drive to the trailhead, hike all day Saturday, camp out Saturday night, hike back to the cars Sunday, drive back to Tech Sunday afternoon, and study Sunday night. Typical weekend backpack. We were hiking back to the cars Sunday afternoon. And hey, sports fans, when you've been with folks elbow to armpit for 36 hours, you get to know each other pretty well. And you can talk about anything. And so here we are hiking back to the cars, and behind me is a delightful freshman named Scott. And out of the clear blue sky, I hear Scott say, "Miller, you seem like such a happy person, and you're not married. How do you explain that?" Now, in psychology and in education, this is what's known as a teachable moment. And here's how I responded to Scott. I said, "Scott, I have tons of friends. I have friends who are married who are very, very happy. And I have friends who are married who are supremely unhappy. So unhappy, they may not stay married very long. And I have friends who are single who are very happy. They feel like they're free to go when and where they want to, with whomever they want to, and do whatever they want to. They have a life of freedom. They're very happy. But I know friends who are single who are miserable. All they do is think about how lonely they are. And Scott, I have friends who are rich, who are very happy. They have everything money can buy. And I have friends who are rich who are miserable. All they do is think about, tomorrow will I lose my assets? And I have friends who are poor, who are not very happy because they don't have life's necessities. And I have friends who are poor, who are really, really happy because they're so thankful for what they do have. And Scott, here's where the rubber hits the road, dude. I know students who have a 4.0 who are very happy. They've achieved their potential. Their future is bright. They are proud of themselves. Their parents are proud of them, and everything looks good. I know students who have a 4.0 who are absolutely miserable because they have no life. They go to class, they study, they eat, they sleep, and they occasionally take a shower, and that's it. They have no life. And I know students who have a 2.0 who are not very happy. Their potential is not great. You know, the doors have slammed shut in their face about going to med school or law school or getting a really good job. They lost their Hope Scholarship. They're not happy. Their parents are not happy. However, I do know students who have a 2.0 who are happy beyond belief. They ought to be. They party all the damn time, right? And so I went through this litany of opposites. People who live in the city, people who live in the country, people who are sick, people who are healthy, people who are attractive, people who are homely. And said, "Scott, what do you deduce from all this?" And he said, maybe happiness is internal. Doesn't depend on these external circumstances. And I says, bingo, you get a gold star. Now here's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at the research of 2 psychologists, Ed Diener and David Myers, who are known as the gurus of happiness. And they have given thousands of people in America, Europe, and Japan that same satisfaction with life survey that you took for this class. And you took it, and you got a score somewhere between 0 and 35. If you scored 35, you're pretty happy. And if you scored 0, you're probably not very happy. Armed with this data, Myers and Diener also gave everyone a survey. And then they correlated the answers to the survey to the score. And what they found was the people who score toward 35, the happy people, tend to have 6 characteristics that almost always appear in their lives, and 5 more that appear at a high enough frequency where it's worth our time. And so there was also good data in both directions. There were people who scored low on the survey, toward 0. And what they found was their characteristics were either the opposite of or the absence of the characteristics of the happy people. So they kind of reinforced each other. And so we're going to look at these 11 characteristics of happy people. Now, you have your satisfaction with life score. Use yourself as a litmus test. If you scored high, as we go through these characteristics, check them off. Say, yes, I have that one. Yes, I have that one. Yes, I have that. If you scored low, then give some thought to saying, I think I probably ought to develop that, or I think I ought to develop that, etc. So based on your satisfaction with life score, use yourself as a guinea pig. Now, this is really important. The mental state of tech students is a big deal with the administration right now. And happiness is a big part of that. So it's a big deal. And you're going to get it in several doses. I'm going to give it to you verbally. I'm going to give you a ton of references. Oh, okay, stop. I need to apologize to you. This is less a lecture than it is a course syllabus. Happiness is such a complex subject that we really need 16 one-hour sessions to explore it in its totality. But we don't have time for that. So I'm going to reference a lot of the aspects of happiness and give you the details by posting an essay or some material on the class web page after this lecture. So you'll have a ton of references for you to go look at to pursue some of the aspects of happiness we don't have time to cover here in this class. And it's important to note that I'm going to give you a ton of references, a lot of references. You do not have to copy them down. All the references will be printed in the notes on the class web page that Mitch or Leslie or one of these folks will be posting after this class. So you don't have to write those down. Now, I really encourage you to take some notes on this lecture if, in fact, you want to remember this stuff. Studies have been done with groups of college students. They'll take college students, divide them into 2 groups, test them, be sure they're the same in all aspects like intellect and SAT score and whatnot. And then they'll give them a lecture. And they'll ask this group to type the notes in the laptop, and they'll ask this group to write the notes out with pencil and paper. And then as soon as the lecture is over, they give them a quiz. And this has been done numerous times. The students who write the notes score higher on the quiz than the students who typed it in the laptop. There's something about the way the brain works where you remember it better if you write it as opposed to typing it. But you do it. You do what's best for you, okay? Now, I am going to beg you to form a contract with me for this class. And here's the contract. You will promise that if you use the laptop to take notes, you will use the laptop to take notes. You will not use it to watch a Netflix movie, to surf the internet, to check your email, to check your Facebook page, to play a computer game. You will not use the laptop for any of the countless distractions that it enables you to engage in. You will use it to take notes. Promise me you will do that. So that's really important. Now, before we begin, we need to ask, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Now, what the hell does that mean? Okay, as we decode the human genome, we have found a pattern, a genetic pattern, for certain characteristics like shyness. Shy people have a certain genomic pattern. Risk-taking, Folks like to throw themselves out of perfectly good airplanes with a parachute on, of course. They have a certain gene pattern. And there may be a gene pattern for happiness. We don't know. But guess what? Doesn't matter. Whatever level your genome places you at in terms of happiness, if you develop these 11 characteristics, you'll rise above it. If you ignore them, you'll fall below it. And it's up to you. So it doesn't matter. And as you probably guessed, happiness is a big damn deal. Look at this. Cover story of The Economist, published out of London, all over the world. Happiness. And look at this. Time magazine. And this is a really good issue of Time magazine. Cover story. It has all the latest research about happiness in it. And this is one of the references that will be in the notes published on the class webpage. So it is a big deal. So, let us begin. Now, we're going to look at these 11 characteristics of happy people in random order. This is not priority order. When Myers and Dinas do the survey, sometimes what's 6 will be 3, what's 1 will be 5, what's 2 will be 4, whatever. This is random order. So let's look at these characteristics. Now, based on your satisfaction with life score, use yourself as a guinea pig. If you scored high, check them off. I do that. I do that. I do that. Some are behaviors, some are attitudes. See how well you do. Okay, let us begin. Number 1, you got to love yourself. In psychology, this is called having high self-esteem. And you love yourself in 2 ways, with your mind and your body. You love yourself with your mind through a behavior known as positive self-talk. And my fine furried friends, if you've never done this, I recommend you give it a shot. Positive self-talk is simply patting yourself on the back verbally when you've done good. And you do the patting out loud. We have stuck students in an MRI and had them think positive self-talk and talk positive self-talk. And different things happen in the brain, sports fans, when you speak this. Different neurotransmitters start bouncing around than when you merely think it. So you say it out loud, positive self-talk. Great example. You come out of a class holding in your hot little hand a returned quiz. And sports fans, it just doesn't have an A on it. It's got a 100. Marvelous opportunity for positive self-talk. So you go to a quiet place and say out loud as you gaze fondly at the 100, you know, this is really good. This validates what I know about me. I'm smart. And not only am I smart, I know what to do to make good grades on a quiz. I know the importance of getting sleep the night before the quiz, of coming to all the classes, of asking the right questions, of doing the homework, of getting tutoring, of being in a study group. I know what to do to make good grades, and I'm glad I'm that kind of person. That's positive self-talk. Or you're at a conference or some sort of club meeting or a wedding reception, who knows, where people are milling around, and you end up talking to someone that y'all two are really on the same wavelength. And you talk for an hour and it seems like 10 minutes, and when the event is over, the person says to you, I really enjoyed meeting you and talking with you. Why don't we meet at Starbucks Friday at 3 and take over where we left off? And you said, I would love to do that. And you go away from that with positive self-talk. You go to a quiet place and say, you know, this interaction that just happened, it really validates the fact that I am a socially skilled person, that I know how to relate to a person that I've just met in a way where we really get on each other's wavelength. They warm up to me, I warm up to them, and the beginning of something really good happens. That takes social skills to do that, and I've got those. This is evidence of that, and I'm really glad I'm that kind of person. So do it. When you've made a great accomplishment, pat yourself on the back with positive self-talk. Number 2, you love yourself with your body. In 4 principal ways, you give it enough sleep. Now that's one of the topics we could spend an hour together pursuing. And studies have shown that one of the major reasons college students don't perform well when they don't perform well is the fact they're not getting enough sleep. The University of Pennsylvania has probably the best psychology department in America, and they have a fabulous sleep lab. And they've done the following experiments a couple of times. They usually pick sophomores. Take two groups of sophomores, be sure they're the same in all respect, SAT score, grades, socioeconomic level, and make them sign a contract where they promise only to sleep for the next week in the sleep lab. This group gets 4 hours sleep a night. This group gets 8 hours sleep. And they let them do this for a week, and then they test them. And what they find is the sleep-deprived group have degraded anywhere from 40 to 60% on 4 mental capabilities that are vital for success in college. Thus, people don't get enough sleep, don't do as well as they could. 4 vital mental capabilities. Number 1, the ability to remember, which is another word for learning. When you learn stuff, you remember it. Number 2, the ability to recall. That's what you do on a quiz. You pull out the stuff you've already stored. Number 3, the ability to correctly analyze, giving a complex problem, parse out that information you really need to solve it. And number 4, the ability to think creatively, to think outside the box. And I have seen that last ability demonstrated dramatically in the lives of computer science majors. You have a programming assignment where you put input to this program you write and you get a desired output. And so here are 2 students. They solve the dilemma. They do the homework. They feed in the data and they get out the correct data. However, this student had 100 lines of code in his program. This student had 10 lines of code. This student was far more creative. And so especially in computer science, you've got to preserve that creativity. All of those degrade without enough sleep. And so you don't do it. So that's the first way you love yourself with your body. You give it enough sleep. Number 2, you feed it right, and you'll learn proper nutrition in this class. Number 3, you exercise it. We have one of the best CRCs of any college in America. When the rating agencies come in and study campus recreation groups, lots of times text number 1. And so you've paid for it, why not use it? And number 4, don't abuse substances. Now let me give you a freebie. One of the worst things you can do in terms of success in your Georgia Tech career is get stressed out. No, not a good idea. And there are psychological and emotional signs for stress, but there's also behavioral signs for stress. And they're related to loving yourself with your body. When you start getting really stressed out, you quit sleeping the right amount. You either sleep 4 hours or 18 hours. Number 2, you quit eating right. Just grab a pack of crackers out of the machine. Number 3, you quit exercising, assuming you had an exercise program. Number 4, you start abusing substances. And there's a 5th one that's not related to loving yourself with your body. You quit spending time with the people you care about. Your friends say, "Where are you? I haven't seen you in the last 2 weeks." Not a good sign. If those start happening, and if they start happening at a high degree, go get some counseling. And don't let it progress. So that's the way you love yourself, with your mind and your body. Number 2, the second characteristic of happy people is they love other people. Now here your Myers-Briggs type enters into it. Your Myers-Briggs type is 4 letters. It's an E or an I, an N or an S, a T or an F, and a J or a P. Those are called preference pairs. And if we look at the first one, the EI preference pairs, it's important to note that everybody does E behavior. And we'll talk about that. Everybody does I behavior. But you prefer one over the other. And if you scored E when you took the Myers-Briggs test, that means you prefer to focus on the world external to yourself and the people in it. So it's a little easier for E's to reach out to other people to form loving relationships. I's can still do it. Just takes more emotional energy. And it's good to note, eyes are great one-on-one. They are masters of the art one-on-one. So, your Myers-Briggs type enters into this. So you've got to really love other people. Now, the first step in loving other people, and this is so important, and I'm going to explain to you how this first step has applicability throughout your life, not just here at Georgia Tech while you're a student. It's called the 7 Principles of Bonding. We psychologists have identified 7 principles that cause people to like each other. And so that's the first step in loving other people. You use the bonding principles where people like you, and in return you like them. But I don't know about you, but I like to have a reference for the stuff I study and learn. And Dale Carnegie, in his incredible book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, wrote about 6 of the bonding principles back in the 1930s. But the 7th one wasn't discovered until the 60s and the 70s. And it's called self-disclosure. And Manuel Smith wrote about self-disclosure in his book, When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. So with these 2 books, you have a lot of insight to the 7 principles of bonding. Now, use yourself as a litmus test. I'm going to give you the Cliff's Notes version, and on the class webpage there will be a little more extensive Cliff's Notes version of the 7 principles of bonding, and they're also on the website. But I'm going to give these to you in Cliff's Notes form. If you've got lots of friends, check and see that you do these. If you've got lots of friends, say, ooh, this first bonding principle, yeah, I do that. Oh, number 2, I do that. Ooh, number 3, I do that. If you don't have as many friends as you would like, then again, you need to give some thought to start learning the bonding principles. Learning how to use the bonding principles in day-to-day life is a skill. And sports fans, there are 4 levels to acquiring any skill, including learning how to use the bonding principles. Any skill, like snow skiing, like public speaking, like baking a loaf of bread. These are all skills. And there are 4 levels of acquiring any skill. The first level is unconscious incompetence. You don't do the skill well, and you don't know why you don't do it well. And in terms of bonding, I doubt if any of you are that level. Once you make it to college, you've already acquired some of the bonding skills. Okay, but that's the first level, unconscious incompetence. Second level is conscious incompetence. You know what to do, but you haven't learned to do it yet. You're aware of it, but you can't do it. And then, of course, you do a lot of work, you get your act together, really work on developing the skill, and you arrive at level 3, conscious competence. You know what to do, and you know how to do it. But that's not the gold standard. The gold standard is level 4. Unconscious competence, where you do the skill without even thinking about it. You see an Olympic skier that is just poetry in motion coming down the ski slope. They ain't thinking about the 15 things you have to do to make a beautiful ski. They just do them automatically. They're at the 4th level, unconscious competence. And that's where you want to be with the bonding principles, where you just do them automatically without even thinking about it. Here they are real quick. Number 1, you got to really like people. If you're a misanthropist, which is a $3 word for someone who hates everybody, chances are you're not going to be able to do the bonding principles. So that's the only attitude. The other 6 are behaviors. So you got to really like people. Number 2, you got to smile. And I could talk to you a long time about the psychological ramifications of smiling, which is one of we human beings' most powerful nonverbal messages. And a smile says several things. When you smile, you're broadcasting to the world around you that it's okay for them to interact with you, that I'm approachable. And once they approach you, the smile also says that you will find when you smile, I'm a really nice person, and you will enjoy interacting with me. And so, because of those 2 nonverbal aspects, smiling is a big damn deal. And so you do that. If you want to bond with people, you smile, and you smile a lot. Number 2 is smiling. Number 3 is using the person's name. And this is another concept that is fraught with psychological overtones. You get the person's name and you sprinkle your conversation with their name. You don't just say, hey, how'd it go today when you encounter a friend? You say, hey, John, how did it go today? Or, hey, Mary, how was your weekend? You sprinkle your conversation with their name. And it's a powerful bonding device. Why? Why is it a powerful bonding device? Well, think about it. Who are you with when you hear your name spoken? When you hear your name verbalized toward you, who are you with? You're probably with a friend with whom you already have a bond, or your family with whom you already have a bond. Your mom says, oh, John, it's so good you could come home this weekend, right? You already have a bond with these people. So when you sprinkle your conversation with the person's name with whom you want to form a bond, and this is kind of surreptitious, they subconsciously put you in the category of friends and family when they hear you say their name. They subconsciously put you in this category of friends and family, and therefore that strengthens your bond with them. So you want to get their name and use it in conversation. Now, I hope none of you guys have said this, but I bet you know friends who do. Oh, I can't remember names. You ever heard that? I can't remember names. Now, that's not an accurate statement. What that person really means is, oh, I haven't yet learned short-term to long-term memory transfer. It's a lot easier to say I can't remember names, right? Right. But I have to share this with you because the research, and it's been written up in the literature, was done by the psychology department here at Tech. We have an ongoing group that studies memory as a function of aging. And here's one of the things they've discovered. Okay, those of you who've had some psychology, you know we have a short-term memory and a long-term memory. And in this learning process, something is introduced into the short-term memory and then transferred to the long-term memory. A polysyllabic concept, which can roughly be described as you can verbalize this concept in around 5 syllables, up to 7 and down to 0. A polysyllabic concept, if kept in your short-term memory, and here's what the research discovered, for a number of seconds approximately equal to your age in years. So for you guys, 20 seconds. If you keep and think about it, all names are polysyllabic. They've got 5 or less syllables. John, Mary, Bill, Elizabeth, Francis, Murgatroyd. You can't think of a name really that's got more than 5 syllables. So names are wonderful candidates for short-term to long-term memory transfer. And so if you just keep a name when you first meet a person in that short-term memory, for you guys 20 seconds, for me 70 seconds, then it automatically transfers to the long-term memory where the decay time is the order of weeks. And so what you do, you just, when you first meet a person, like at sorority or fraternity, rush, or at a conference or someplace, or a party, any place where nobody's wearing a name tag, you simply tack their name onto about 3 sentences, and poof. Now, let's go through a little mathematical exercise here. Let's graph retention in the short-term memory on the vertical axis versus time in seconds. Okay? So I meet somebody. Well, Francis, it's good to meet you. And bang, retention in my short-term memory is way up here. And it starts to decay. And it'll decay in 10 to 15 seconds for most people. So if I don't say Francis again in 10 to 15 seconds, it decays and it's gone. And a minute later, I haven't the foggiest idea who this person is I'm talking to. So you don't let that happen. You say, Francis, it's good to meet you. And Francis says, well, it's good to meet you, Bella. And I say, well, Francis, what brings you to this conference? And when I said Francis the second time in less than 10 seconds, whoof, it came back. And it starts to decay again. And he says, oh, I really like electrical engineering, and there's some seminars here I really want to see. Oh, Francis, that's really cool. Francis, that's really cool. Francis, what seminar do you especially want to go to? And by now, if I'm one of you, 20 seconds has passed, and Francis transfers to my long-term memory, where the decay time is the order of weeks. And if you've never done this, give it a shot. Go meet somebody for the first time and use this technique. It is phenomenal. And it also works for German vocabulary words, assuming they're not this long as some German words are. So do it. So you get their name. That's the third principle of bonding. You get it and use it. Fourth principle is called self-disclosure. That's the principle that was discovered later in the grand scheme of things and written about in Manuel Smith's book. To build a bond with a person, you share yourself with the person in little bits and pieces and get them to share themselves with you in little bits and pieces. You don't yak at the person continuously for 30 minutes about how great you are and then trot away thinking, ooh, this person knows how great I am, they'll want to be my friend. No, it doesn't work that way. No, a person likes you when you tell them how great they are, not when you tell them how great you are. But little bits and pieces. I'm from Augusta, Georgia, Francis. Where are you from? He says, oh, I'm from Perry, Georgia. That's not too far away. Well, gosh, what commonalities do you think we have? I really like snow skiing. What do you like? And you go back and forth in little bits and pieces. Self-disclosure. The fifth principle, guys, this is for you. The fifth principle is called be a good listener. And there are some evolutionary arguments that say evolutionarily men are not good listeners. And guys, I can testify to you that when a member of the fairer gender discovers a guy that knows how to listen, she has found a hot ticket item. And so guys really especially need to practice how to be a good listener. I was leading a study abroad program, the Pacific program. We were in Sydney, Australia for several weeks. And while we were there, this book came out that was number one on the non-fiction bestseller list for Australia. And it was like the famous book in America called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, which focused on behavioral characteristics of men and women due to their gender. And an analogous book came out in Australia, and it had the most provocative title. The title was, Men Don't Listen and Women Can't Read Maps. and it had an evolutionary argument for why this was the case. But in general, that is the case. Men are not as good listeners as women. So men, it behooves you especially to develop the 5 components of good listening. So you will be a hot ticket item. It's really good to be a good listener. And the 5 components are, number 1, eye contact. When you're talking to a person, you look them in the face. And most of you guys are doing that right now, which is good. Number 2 is called interjection. An interjection is a verbalization with no knowledge content. And so the person says, oh man, I've got a great big quiz coming up next week. And you let them know you heard what you said by, oh wow. And notice you just said, oh wow, that's an interjection. But you said it with a tone that said, I'm sorry for all the studying you've got to do between now and then. Right? But these interjections are things like, yeah, or no, or cool, or no way. Those are all interjections, and you say them after the person said something and the person knows you heard what they said. That's the second component of good listening. Third component is nonverbal. Now, eye contact's nonverbal, but it's so important you give it your own category. That leaves 3 ways to listen nonverbally. Change of facial expression. So I've got a neutral facial expression, and you say something, and I go, wow, with an amazed facial expression. And I don't even have to say wow. I just go, ah. You change your facial expression. Number 2, body movement. Normally a movement of the head, like, yeah, dude, that's cool, or no way, that's not going to happen. Usually a movement of the head. And number 3, gestures. So you say, wow, dude, that's great, and give them a gesture. And the 4th and 5th ways to be a good listener, you have to learn. They are not intuitively obvious. The 4th way is you make a comment about what the person said, and it makes it, you don't have to, but it makes it warm and fuzzy, or you self-disclose based on what they said. So Francis said, I had the best time last weekend windsurfing down in Daytona Beach. And you let Francis know you heard what he said by saying, you make a comment, windsurfing sounds like a really exciting sport. And then you self-disclose. But I don't know how to windsurf. Tell me what it's like. And so Francis knows for sure you heard what he said. And number 5, you could have asked a question about what they said in self-disclose. You could have said, Francis, where in the world did you learn how to windsurf? And then tack on, I don't know how. Tell me about it. So there it is. 5 components of good listening. And guys, you especially do it. The 6th bonding principle is talk in terms of the other person's interest. You use questions to find out what they're really interested in, and then you focus on it. Now, talking in terms of the other person's interest comes in 2 flavors, chocolate and vanilla. No, 2 flavors. A, you know the topic they're interested in. They're interested in race cars, you're interested in race cars, so you can really go at it. Or B, you know nothing about what they're interested in. And that's wonderful too, because then you get them to tell you all about it. You get them to teach you all about it. So you can always talk in terms of the other person's interest. And the 7th bonding principle doesn't occur the opportunity to use it doesn't occur very often. But goodness gracious sakes alive, when it does, you jump on it. It's called affirmation. When you find something the person's proud of, you pat them on the back verbally. Wow, you made a 4.0 last semester. That is so awesome. I'm proud of you, dude. You must have had to really work hard to do that. And I bet you were proud. I bet your mom and dad were proud. That's a good thing. I tried, but I only made a 3.8. And affirmation consists not only of the pat on the back, but also a little self-disclosure as well. So there it is. Now, how did you do? If you got lots of friends, do you do all 7 of these? Or if you don't have many friends, do you not do all 7 of these? Think about it. That's the first step toward loving other people, the 2nd characteristic of happy people. An additional bit of information about loving other people. Sports fans, I don't know whether you are in a relationship, have been in a relationship, or want to be in a relationship. But if you would like to have a really solid relationship with another human being, I suggest you meditate on the Harry Stack Sullivan definition of what it means to love another person. It's called the behavioral definition of love. Here it is. To love another person is to be totally, and that's the key, to be totally committed to helping the other person be everything they want to be in the present and become everything they want to become in the future. Love is not about me, it's about the other person. And when 2 people have this philosophy toward each other, one can say the whole is truly greater than the sum of its parts. It's really fantastic. And if you would like to have insight to love in this deeper sense, I suggest you run, not walk, to Amazon.com and get The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. Incredible book. It's actually 4 books, but it's got 4 independent chapters. Each chapter is not related to the other 3. And the 2nd chapter is entitled Love. And sports fans, it gives insight to love like you almost will not believe. And it not only shows what love is, but it goes into detail about what love is not. And if I were governor of the state of Georgia, I would lobby the legislature to pass rules and regs that say in Georgia, you can't get a marriage license until you've passed a written test on the love chapter of The Road Less Traveled. It would cut the divorce rate in half, in my opinion. And hey, we have to take a written test to get a driver's license. How much more important to our society is stable families than simply knowing you can't pass a car when the yellow line is on your side of the white line, right? It's really important. But anyway, if loving relationships are important to you, get The Road Less Traveled. Another interesting comment about loving other people, you probably don't know this, but within the university system of Georgia, we have a research group that has units at different universities that study centenarians in Georgia. Centenarians, people who live to be 100. And they study these people to find out how they did it so they can pass the secrets on to you and me. And they found a lot of interesting things about these old-timers. But one of the things that cuts across the board, the centenarians have positive relationships with friends and family. They have learned to love other people. It's been a factor in their longevity. And a final comment about loving other people. All the great musicals of the 40s and 50s were written by the same two guys, Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein. They wrote Sound of Music, they wrote Showboat, they wrote Carousel, they wrote South Pacific, all of those. It has been said that Richard Rodgers wrote the following poem to a friend on a Valentine one February. I will quote it to you. A bell's not a bell till you ring it. A song's not a song till you sing it. And the love in your heart wasn't put there to stay, 'cause love isn't love till you give it away. Love's one of the few things in the world, sports fans, such that the more of it you give away, the more of it you have. I can think of two others. Hate. The more you hate, the more of a hating person you become. And anger. The more you manifest the behavioral characteristics of anger, the more of an angry person you become. I vote for love. Okay, the third characteristic of happy people is a really big one. And it has a lot of applicability to your life as a tech student. Happy people believe they are in control of their life. Now, you took the locus of control test, and you scored either internal or external. If you scored internal locus of control, that means you believe there is a correlation between your effort and the outcome. If you scored external, you don't believe that, or at least not to a strong degree. If you scored external, you believe that no matter your effort, the outcome is due to chance. The roll of the dice, the flip of the coin, the dealing of the cards. And so it's a no-brainer to you that college students who have an internal locus of control, which is often phrased poetically as, I am master of my fate, captain of my soul. College students who have an internal locus of control do better academically because they believe there's a correlation between my effort and the outcome. If I work hard enough, I'll get good grades. And the experiment that's been done is taken two equally matched groups of college students, run them through a semester, and this group is internal locus, that's external locus, and look at their average GPA for the group at the end of the semester. The internal always, no exception, has a higher average GPA than the external. And we may be onto something. If you scored external locus of control and your GPA is not where you want it to be, you can go get some counseling and change over. You can change over to an internal locus of control, and you will probably do better as a result of it. But it's interesting. Now, suppose we take two students, one with an internal locus of control, one with an external locus of control. Throw them in a class, give them in a quiz, they both make an A. The student with the internal locus of control looks at the A and says, you know, I earned this A. I busted my butt studying for this. I did all the homework problems, got sleep the night before the quiz, was in a study group, got tutoring. I busted my butt. I do everything known to humankind to make a good grade. And by George, it worked. I earned this A. The student with the external locus of control looks at the A and says, well, look at that. The dice rolled up in my favor. I just happened to study the stuff the prof asked about on the quiz. I could have studied just as much, just as hard, just as long, and made a C. As though there's no correlation between the effort and the outcome. So, having an internal locus of control is good. And of course, college students who do well academically tend to be happier than the ones who are flunking their ass out. And so it's a good thing. If you got internal locus of control and you have that correlation, poetically, again, internal, I'm master of my fate, captain of my soul. External, I'm just a leaf blowing in the wind. All I can do is react to what goes on around me. Better academically to have an internal locus of control. Now, sometimes, not always, but sometimes a person's speech pattern reveals their locus of control. Person A says to person B, hey, let's go to the movie Sunday night. And person B says, oh, I can't. Forces beyond me have wrapped me in duct tape and are preventing me from going to the movie. External locus of control. Whereas if that person were internal, they would say, I would love to go to the movie with you Sunday night, but I choose not to. I'm master of my fate, captain of my soul, because I've got a big quiz on Monday and I need to study Sunday night. Let's go to the movie next weekend. Can't. Sometimes an indicator of an external locus of control. Another one is hope. Oh, I hope I'm going to do well on the physics quiz next week. You don't just hope. You get your act together and study really, really hard where you will do well. A little aside here. Shortly after the earth cooled, when I was in high school, I was in a very advanced high school. And the senior class had an option of taking a voluntary seminar on sex education. Pretty spicy seminar. And in one of those seminar sessions, they showed a movie on birth control, which I still remember to this day. And the title of the movie was very provocative. Hope is not a method. The movie on birth control. Hope is not a method. And I apply that title to a lot of things today. Oh, I hope I'm going to do well on the physics quiz. No! Hope is not a method. You bust your butt and study for it where you're really ready to go. Oh, I hope Susie will accept her when I ask her for a date. No, you don't hope. You display your dashing, charming, captivating personality to Susie and be very articulate in your conversation with her so that when you ask her for a date, she'll say yes. You don't just hope Susie will accept your request for a date. Hope is not a method. Hope is not a method. And like I said, those two, can't and hope, sometimes indicate external locus of control. Now, here comes the big one. Here comes the big one. This is mainly for sophomores. Juniors and seniors, it's kind of late. But now, let's face it. Well, this is for sophomores and Georgians. Let's face it. You will be happier if you don't lose your Hope Scholarship, if you're from Georgia, and if from the time you're a sophomore thereon you make great grades. You will be happier. Because think just for a minute of the doors that close. And sorry, you seniors, I'm fixing to whap you in the face if you don't have a super duper point average, but so be it. Think of the doors that close if you don't graduate from Tech with a really high GPA. Doors close. You can't get in med school. Can't get in law school. Can't get in grad school. Can't get a six-figure salary with ExxonMobil. All of these doors close if you don't graduate with a really high GPA. McKinsey, the most famous consulting firm on the planet Earth, will not interview a Tech student with less than a 3.8. And so it behooves all of us to do as well academically as we can. And the reason I say that, well, of course, you'll be happier when you have good grades. And it behooves you to ask yourself, to kind of set up the pins, to do well academically. It behooves you to ask yourself, why in the hell am I here? Why am I a student at Georgia Tech? And there's a very simple three-part answer. I'm at Tech to master a body of knowledge so I can get a good job when I graduate, so I can support myself and a family. You think about that. You're laying the foundation blocks for the rest of your life. So it's really a big damn deal. But you got to master that body of knowledge. And what's the index that shows how well you mastered your body of knowledge? Whether we like it or not, it's the damn GPA. And so you want to do well academically. And we're talking about happy people are in control of their life. One thing college students don't realize is to the 90% probability level, you, my fine furried friends, have control over your GPA. It's not a roll of the dice. We know, we educators, we know why this group of college students does well academically and why this group does poorly. And at Georgia Tech, it is not a question of intellect. You don't get in Georgia Tech unless you have the smarts to do really, really well academically. It's behaviors. The people that make a 2.0 at Tech are not doing the behaviors. They're not doing them well enough. They're not doing enough of them as the students who make a 3.8. They're doing the behaviors. And research has been done for years by educators in college, and we know what the behaviors are. And I observed them during the 30 years I ran dorms. There are 9 behaviors such that if you do them well, you will have a 90% probability of making at least a 3.5 at Georgia Tech. And there is a package posted on the class webpage. If you're watching this presentation on the internet, it's posted on my website. There's a package called the ABAS System. ABAS, Assessing Behaviors for Academic Success. Big package on the class website that goes into great detail on how you use the ABAS system to make great grades. And what that does, the ABAS itself is simply a piece of paper that has the 9 behaviors on it, and you get a point value every Sunday night. It's like going for a physical. You go get a physical exam, you get all these numbers back from your blood test and what else. The ABAS is like getting an academic physical every Sunday night on how well you did the preceding week. And the 9 behaviors are listed on the ABAS You get points for how well you did each behavior last week. And the statistics show that if you consistently score, if you do all the behaviors perfectly well, your score is 100. But the studies show that if you consistently score on the ABAS with the 9 behaviors, 87 or higher every week, so that your average for the semester is 87 or higher, then you have the 90% probability of making at least 3.5. 9 out of every 10 Tech students who do this make 3.5 or higher. And lots of them make a 4.0. And so this is well worth doing. And Georgians, you ignore this at your peril. You will be happier if you keep your Hope Scholarship. Your parents certainly will be happier if you keep your Hope Scholarship. And the ABAS system is a way that virtually guarantees you will keep your Hope Scholarship. So you need to look at this. Now, if you've got, use yourself as a litmus test. Happy people are in control of their lives. Show you are in control of the academic phase of your life. See how well you do the 9 behaviors. Here they are, based on research done with college students. 9 behaviors that lead to academic success. Number 1, never cut class. Number 2, always do 90 to 100% of the homework. Number 3, study 2 hours out of class during the week for every semester hour credit. So if you're taking 15 semester hour credits, you study 30 hours that week. That one's really important. Number 4, use the college helping sources, which is tutoring. The whole second floor of the Clough building is devoted to tutoring in every subject. Doesn't matter. ME 4271, doesn't matter. They've got tutoring in every subject. College helping sources, tutoring, study groups. Get in a study group so you can help each other before the quiz. And number 3, Word. Word means old quizzes. And you'd be surprised the number of professors now that post their old quizzes online. Fraternities and sororities have the best Word files, where it's a great big file. It's not physical paper anymore. It's electronic. But first it's by major, mechanical engineering. Then it's by all the courses, 1401, 2207. And then within each course, it's the professors who teach it. And behind the professor is all their old quizzes. And if you don't have access to a Word file, now like I said, a lot of it's online, but if you don't have access to a Word file, form a study group with a sorority person or a fraternity person who does have access to a Word file and get them to bring the old quiz to the study group before the quiz. So that's the 4th behavior. Use the college helping sources. The 5th behavior is so important. In fact, this is, of the 9 behaviors, this is the one you never violate. There's 2 of them you never violate, and this is one of them. Have perfect time management skills, meaning you have 4 calendars, a daily calendar, weekly calendar, monthly calendar, and semester calendar. And you use the calendar software like iCal or Google Cal, makes it really easy. And the critical calendar is the weekly calendar, because it's got all the daily calendars. Weekly calendar is 7 columns corresponding to 7 days of the week, and 24 cells in a column corresponding to 24 hours per day. And most students who have never been exposed to the Optimism system give me a deer in the headlights look when I tell them your weekly calendar has no blank cells. Every cell is labeled. And on that weekly, and the good thing about using iCal or Google Cal, you make a generic weekly calendar. Generic, it's got 4 things on it. 8 hours sleep every night, all your classes, 2-for-1 study time, and maintenance functions. When you eat breakfast, when you eat lunch, when you eat supper, when you work out, when you do laundry, when you shop at Publix, etc. And then you have blank cells left over when you do that. But you make the generic calendar, click the mouse 4 times, you've got your monthly calendar. Click that 4 times, you've got your semesterly calendar. And every Sunday night, you look at the generic calendar for the coming week and fill in the blank cells. No blank cells. No blank cells? What about Saturday and Sunday? Hey, all work and no play makes the average tech student a very dull young adult. And so your Saturday cells are filled in with labels like do nothing, have fun, hang out with friends, play Frisbee, go to a movie, enjoy myself. You build your recreation into your weekly calendar. And so you have your 4 calendars. And the 2 items on the calendar you never compromise are 8 hours sleep every night. Now suppose you've got midnight to 8 on your calendar as sleep. And something comes up and you don't get in bed until 1 a.m. Do you just kiss off that last hour of sleep? No. During that 24-hour segment, you get to take an hour nap sometime later in the day so that your total is still 8 hours. Never sacrifice sleep for 24 hours, and you never sacrifice 2-for-1 study time per week. You've got 4 hours study time programmed for a Tuesday night from 8 to 12. Something happens and you don't start studying until 9. Do you kiss off that 1 hour? No. You move it. Move it to Wednesday afternoon, or you move it to Saturday or Sunday, where your 2-for-1 study time per week is always preserved. Sports fans, it takes work to do well academically, but the Abbess Forum just channels that work. You've got the intellect, the Abbess Forum just channels your behaviors. And speaking of your behaviors, that 5th behavior on the Abbess Forum is have perfect time management. It has been said that 10% of your effort goes into making your calendars. 90% of your effort goes into following it. And you do that. In fact, that's the 6th behavior, following your schedule. The 7th behavior is task management. Every day you have a to-do list. And then you prioritize it. And so today, if I've only got time to do one thing on my list, it'll be this one. It's got a 1 by it. If I've got more time, it'll be these 2. And if you're like me, I never get everything on the to-do list done each day. And so what do? At the end of the day, you take the 6 or 8 things you didn't do, transfer it to the next day, add the new tasks, and reprioritize. So that's the 7th behavior. Have daily task lists. The 8th behavior is avoid computer-aided distractions. And I know students, when they come to tech, and they've really got their head screwed on right, they erase every computer game on their hard disk, and they erase all the URLs for the online games, where they don't do computer games while they're a student. And you have to avoid, and I'm going to explain this a little better in just a second, but you have to avoid computer-aided distractions like computer games and watching hours and hours of movies or documentaries or spending time on Facebook or spending time with non-academic emails, all of that. Yeah, you avoid that. Now, if you put it in the category of recreation, then it's okay. And it's okay if your recreational use of computer-aided distraction averages less than 45 minutes a day. And I've known students who had 0 computer-aided distractions during the week, and Saturday morning they played World of Warcraft from 8 a.m. to 12 noon. 4 hours, you divide that by 7, that's less than 45 minutes a day average. And it's recreation, it's okay. But in general, you avoid computer-aided distractions. And the 9th behavior, we've alluded to this a lot already, get 8 hours sleep. Now, why 8? Those of you who had psychology know that the mantra is we human beings need 7.5. Well, we're genetically programmed for 5 sleep cycles, each one lasting an hour and a half on average for most people. And 1.5 times 5 is 7.5 hours sleep. That's where it comes from. For you, young adults between 14 and 24, no. Your sleep cycle, on average, is an hour and 40 minutes, not an hour and 30, or an hour and 45. That's why you need 8 to 10 hours sleep to really be at your peak of mental functioning. And so that's on the Abbess form. And so that's it. And the details about the Abbess form system will be posted on the class webpage. So if you're a Georgian, ignore this at your peril. If you're a sophomore, ignore this at your peril. Because I've known students that I had the opportunity to work with their first semester. They did the Abbess form, they made a 4.0, and they made great grades. The other 7 semesters they were at Georgia Tech. And they went to work for ExxonMobil with a 6-figure salary. And so it's a good thing. So you do that. Now, we're talking about happy people being in control of their life. One final comment about being in control of your life, and you seniors, take note of this. Most seniors, especially if you're in engineering, don't realize the degree to which you have control over your future financial security. And if, sports fans, when you reach 65, if you've got several $1 million worth of assets to retire on, you are good to go. You do not want to be in such dire financial straits that you find yourself eating cat food. And the way you do that, a lot of you know about Warren Buffett, the famous investor. He has touted what Peter Lynch wrote about in 1992. Incredible book. Both Peter Lynch and Warren Buffett tell college grads to use a very specific system to build wealth. Says, and Warren Buffett especially, he says, you don't have time as a college grad to spend 24/7 studying companies and studying the market and studying their past performance and studying their mission. You don't have time for all that. So you let the market, this is Warren Buffett's phrase, let the market do your work for you. If you plot any market, S&P 500, NASDAQ, Dow, they all do this. They go up over time, all of them, always. Now, they fluctuate a lot in between, but over the long term, they always go up. And so Warren Buffett says, as a young college grad, you only have one choice if you want to build wealth. You do income averaging on an index fund. And posted on the class webpage is an essay called Investment Literacy that really all of you need to read. I've known freshmen who started the investment literacy protocol when they didn't even have much money, but they were a freshman. But you really start it when you graduate and have a salary. And it simply means you invest in an index fund for 2 reasons. The stock, it follows the market, and the market always goes up, and they don't cost anything. Managed funds cost anywhere from 4 to 6% of what you put into it. Index fund costs 0.4% because there's nothing to manage. The company buys a valid random sample of all the stocks on the S&P 500 and you turn it loose and let it go. So there's nothing to manage. And number 2, the market always goes up. So if you just stay with it, and so you do a thing called income averaging where you put the same dollar amount into the fund every month. And guess what? When you do that, you rejoice when the market tanks. Because that means when the market tanks, that $800 you're putting in every month to buy shares of the index fund, you get a lot more shares. And you also set up the fund so that all the dividends that it generates goes back into the fund and buys more shares. That makes it grow by compound interest. Anyway, read Investment Literacy on the webpage, especially if you're a graduating senior, so that you will optimize your probability for future happiness by being financially secure when you graduate. Do it. Your happiness as a future retiree depends on it. So, I told you that was a big deal. Happy people feel in control of their life, and all of that has to do with being in control of your life. So I hope that applies to a lot of you. Fourth characteristic of happy people is they are optimistic. And I love the optimist's mantra. I'm great, you're great, the world's great, and tomorrow it's going to be even better. That's optimism. And sports fans, if you don't know how optimistic you are, ask your friends. If they're honest with you, they'll say, oh my goodness, you are a ray of sunshine. You walk into a room and the whole room lights up. Or, if they're honest, they might say, you are such a wet blanket. You walk into a room and all the potted plants die. But if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to ask your friends, get the amazing book written by Marty Siegelman, who was chairman of the American Psychological Association, the APA, Learned Optimism. And it starts off with a quiz. You take the quiz and it tells you how optimistic or pessimistic you are. And then the rest of the book has exercises in it that helps you become more optimistic. So if you take the quiz and you're not optimistic at the level you want to be, go through the book and get more optimistic. And sports fans, optimism in our society is a big deal. It's really good to be optimistic. But a lot of research has been done on optimistic people. Now, I like this one. This is an excerpt from a research paper from the University of California at Berkeley. The research found that optimism is associated with longer life. How about them apples? People over 50 who viewed aging as a positive experience lived an average of 7.5 years longer than those who did not. Those classified as optimists had half the risk of early death. How about that? Compared to those classified as pessimists or mixed. And here's the part I like. The optimists had fewer problems as they aged. Fewer limitations, less pain, more energy. So be optimistic, sports fans. Now, the fifth characteristic of happy people is related to your Myers-Briggs type again. Happy people focus on the world outside of themselves. That's almost the definition of the E preference. Now remember, if you're an E, it's easy for you to do this, to focus on the world outside of yourself. If you're an I, you still do it. It just takes a little more emotional energy. Now, my fine furried friends, we both know there are a jillion ways to focus on the world outside of yourself. But 3 are specifically important. Number 1, get a job. Psychologically, a job gives structure to your life, and we human beings operate better with structure. And sports fans, you have a job right now. What is it? Being a student, earning your degree, mastering your body of knowledge. And does it ever give structure to your life? Up at 8, shower and breakfast from 8 to 9, class from 9 to 10. Class from 10 to 11. Go study at the court from 11 to 12. 12 to 1, eat lunch. 1 to 2, class. 2 to 3, go study. 3 to 5, work out at the CRC. 5 to 6, clean up. 6 to 7, have supper. 7 to 8, hang out with friends. 8 to midnight, study. Next day, repeat. It gives total structure to your life. And that's a good thing. We human beings operate better with structure. But beyond that, beyond the goodness that comes from having structure to our lives as a way of focusing on the world outside of ourselves, having a job is part of our identity in Western society. How many times have you ever met a person who introduces himself, oh, my name is Ignatius P. Dunleavy. I'm an engineer with Lockheed. They tack their job onto their name as part of their identity. My name is Murgatroyd B. Fauntleroy. I'm a stockbroker with Goldman Sachs. They tack it on. And the following may have happened to you. You're at a wedding reception. And suddenly mom and dad come over dragging a friend along. And they say to the friend, I want you to meet my daughter Mary. She's an ME at Georgia Tech. That's your job. It got tacked on as part of your identity. So it's a big deal. And you probably don't know this. Your parents might. But if anybody knows what I'm fixing to say, it'll be your grandparents. They had a friend who worked for the XYZ Corporation for 40 years and retired. And 6 months later, he died. He gave up his job. He gave up his life. And so having a job is a big deal. And remember, you've got a job right now. A second way to focus on the world outside of yourself is enjoy the power of touch. Now, in this age of sexual harassment, one must be careful how one uses the power of touch, okay? Talk to Joe Biden about that, right? But we psychologists and our brothers and sisters, the sociologists, had a wake-up call in the early 1900s when, for no reason, babies in orphanages in London were dying. And there was no reason for them to die. They were not genetically malformed. They didn't have a sickness. They weren't malnourished. They didn't have SIDS. They just died. And when the Ministry of Health sent people in to investigate, they found the babies who died were not touched. Their diapers were changed perfunctorily while they lay in the crib. They were fed by placing the bottle between their lips and then removing it. They were not picked up and held. The babies who were picked up and held lived. Those who were not touched died. And we came away, we psychologists especially, saying there is a big damn deal to this power of touch. And in our present society, touch is okay as ritual touch, which is the handshake, or when a bond of trust exists. You have a bond of trust with you and your mom and dad. You haven't seen them in a long time, you give them a big hug. Wonderful form of touch. You tussle with your brothers and sisters. Put an arm around the shoulder of a sorority sister or a fraternity brother, because the bond of trust is there. So it's okay. Now, all of you will have to do ritual touch numerous times, especially when you interview. Numerous times, handshake, men and women. And it's important, like smiling, which is a powerful non-verbal mode of communication. Ritual touch is a powerful non-verbal mode of communication. When a handshake is done right, it communicates that you have a strong personality. If it's done poorly, it communicates you have a weak personality. And when you're going for a job interview, you do not want to communicate to them you have a weak personality. That is not a good idea. And so to communicate with ritual touch, a handshake, you have a strong personality, the skin fold between the thumb and the forefinger must touch on both hands. And it's important that men and women both do this. You both have got to have a strong handshake. I need a volunteer. You will do. Step forward. Come with me up to the front. Oh, no. You've got a friend to look out for. You do it. Come forward. You look out for your friend. And he is really behaving well. I commend you on your training. All right, watch. When we shake hands, everybody's got to do this. Let the skin fold between the thumb and the forefinger touch. Bang. That's a powerful handshake. Do it again where these folks can see. Bang. Powerful handshake. Do it again where these folks can see. Bang. Powerful handshake. And if the interviewer tries to do this with you, oh, good to meet you. Boy, don't let them. Don't let them. You come back and do the strong handshake. Do not do that dead fish, put it in the bowl handshake. Don't go away. We're not finished. The members of the American Dairy Association. Now, these are the dairy farmers that have to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning to milk the damn cows, okay? They have a tough life. Their life is one of hardship. And the members of the American Dairy Association, these dairy farmers, they know this. They know their life is tough. And because of this toughness, they have an unusual bond of trust, the members of the American Dairy Association. So here we are at the annual conference of the American Dairy Association. And here is Lars, who hasn't seen Stefan since last year. And they're really good buddies, okay? And so they're coming down the hall, and Lars says to Stefan, "Stefan, it is so good to see you." And Stefan says, "Lars, it is so good to see you." And so they shake hands as only the members of the American Dairy Association shake hands. Lars, do this. And hold it. And Lars stands there and Stefan runs up and they shake hands. Don't try this at home, right? Okay, thank you. Right? But the bond of trust is there, so it's okay. Fantastic. And a third way to focus on the world outside of yourself, and believe it or not, you have marvelous opportunities to do this at Georgia Tech. You give to others. You give in big ways and you give in little ways. As a tech student, you can give in big ways. You can give up 12 precious study hours every week to tutor an underprivileged kid in math and reading through Techwood Tutorial. You can give up entire weekends to help build a house for a less fortunate family through Habitat for Humanity. You can do that. You can give in big ways. You can give in little ways. You're coming back from the post office up the Tech walkway with a great big package of goodies your grandmother has sent you, and you see a friend as you come up the walkway, and you say, "Here, have a chocolate chip cookie." That's giving in little ways. You live in Smith Dorm, and you're headed to the varsity for a snack, and as you go out, you stick your head in a door down the hall and say, "I'm going to the V, can I bring you something?" That's giving in little ways. Do both. Give in big ways and give in little ways. And the sixth characteristic of happy people is they search for meaning until they find it. Most folks find meaning in life through an expression of religious faith. Others find it through adherence to a philosophy. But the critical thing is you establish the philosophical basis for your life's morality. The philosophical base for your life's morality. You ascribe to this meaning that tells for your entire life what behaviors are right for you and what behaviors are wrong for you. And in the nomenclature of wellness, this is called spiritual wellness. And it's interesting to note that when Myers and Diener do the survey, there's places for comments, of course, on the survey. And it's not uncommon for a comment something like the following to appear. Because I have found meaning in my life, I believe these other characteristics which I associate with my personal happiness became possible. Because I found meaning in life, I could love myself. I could love other people. I could be optimistic. I could feel in control. And so finding meaning in life is very important. Those six characteristics always appear. Always. Now, there are 5 more that appear with a high enough frequency. And those of you who had a high satisfaction with life score, how are we doing? Do we have most of these under our belts already? If so, good for you. The 7th characteristic of happy people is they live one day at a time. Think about it! Yesterday is gone. Nothing we can do will bring it back. Tomorrow may not be here, at least not in the form we think it will. Today is all we got. And this living one day at a time in psychology is called present moment living. And it's really all we got. And college students are good at this. I've seen tech students on campus wearing the t-shirt, Carpe Diem, seize the day. And you know a philosophy like present moment living has reached mainstream when it appears encoded in a country music song. About 20 years ago, the number one country music song on the country music hit parade was entitled "Live One Day at a Time." I will not sing it for you, but I will recite the phrase. It said, "Tomorrow may never be mine. Show me the way. Teach me today to live one day at a time." And so you do that. You engage in present moment living. Now, does present moment living mean I don't have to worry about next week's physics quiz? No. Because today, in my handy-dandy smartphone, I call up today's schedule and I call up today's to-do list, both of them. And today's schedule says from 8 to 10 tonight, study for next week's physics quiz. And the to-do list says, study for next week's physics quiz. Present moment living, sports fans, does not absolve us from tomorrow's responsibilities, but you focus on today. The 8th characteristic of happy people is they laugh and smile a lot. I don't know about you, but I'm a great believer in old grandmother's sayings. Don't be penny wise and pound foolish. Stitch in time saves 9. Apple a day keeps the doctor away. One you don't hear as much, but one I really like is, the time you need most to laugh and smile is the time you feel least like laughing and smiling. You laugh and smile and it brings you back up. And parenthetically, it brings up the people around you. So happy people laugh and smile a lot. The 9th characteristic of happy people is a really, really big one. Happy people avoid self-defeating behaviors. Now in psychology, a self-defeating behavior is defined as a behavior that has an immediate payoff, but the long-term consequence is negative. And there are 5 fundamental self-defeating behaviors that happy people avoid like the plague. 5 of them. And I want you to remember them with the mnemonic ABC, gone with the wind. ABC, gone with the wind. A is anger. Look at your hostility score. Look at your anger subscale. If that's more than 7, you need to do something about the part that anger plays in your life. If it's above 7, it's too big, and that's not good. And let's look at anger. Why is anger a self-defeating behavior? Well, we get angry, normally speaking, at a person who has done something we didn't want them to do, or they did not do something we did want them to do. So we go, "Rawr!" and they get their act together and do or not do what we want them to. In general, anger is used to manipulate people. No. There's better ways to get people to do what you want them to and to work with people than using anger to manipulate them. Much better. It's a self-defeating behavior because you get angry at a person and they do or not do what you want them to. But the long-term consequence is they don't like you as much. And if you really threw a hissy fit, when you were angry, you yelled, hollered, and screamed, gesticulated wildly, contorted your facial features, stomped out of the room, slammed the door, threw things, struck people, then they'll hate your guts. And so that long-term negative consequence resulting from the use of anger is not good. That's why anger is a self-defeating behavior. And if, in fact, and I'll go into this right now, if, in fact, you scored too high on the anger subscale and would like to do something about it, you have several options. One is to get some counseling. And sports fans, if you decide to get a counselor to help you deal with, not deal with, you need to get a counselor that doesn't teach you how to manage anger. You get a counselor that teaches you how to eliminate anger. And with cognitive behavioral therapy, that's totally possible. So that's the first thing you do, to get some counseling. Second thing you do, if you don't want to do that, get the incredible book by Dr. Wayne Dyer, Your Erroneous Zones. Now, it's not a dirty book. It's not your erogenous zones. It's your erroneous zones. And that's his tongue-in-cheek terminology for self-defeating behavior. And in this book, he has a chapter about every single self-defeating behavior, including anger. And taking the anger chapter as an example, he tells you why we do it, what the immediate payoff is, what the long-term negative consequence is, and how to eliminate it. So it's a good deal. And he has the other 4 self-defeating behaviors in the mnemonic, BC, Gone with the Wind. Also, there's a chapter for each one of them in here. And sports fans, even if you don't derive anything of psychological value from Your Erroneous Zones, it is a good read. It is well written. And one thing I would kind of challenge you to do, there's a last chapter in here, chapter 12, that if you decide to read erroneous zones, you read chapter 12 first. And chapter 12 is entitled, A Portrait of a Person Who Has Eliminated All Erroneous Zones. And it's a marvelous, well-written description of such a person. And if that describes you perfectly, you don't need to read the book. But to the degree it does not describe you, you do need to read the book. So it's really cool. But it's a really good book, and I recommend everybody to read that one. But if anger is a problem with you, those first two steps, counseling and erroneous zones, are steps. There is a third step, however. As a counseling psychologist, one of my many specialties was helping people to eliminate anger. And I'm retired. I have all the time in the world. You email me. We'll meet for coffee, and we will work on helping you to eliminate anger, if in fact that's a problem for you. So you have 3 steps to take care of that. ABC, gone with the wind. B, blaming. It's a self-defeating behavior because, whonk, someone knocked over the glass on the table, the milk is spilt, and it's flowing all over the damn table. Oh, that was your fault. No, it wasn't. The dog barked and frightened me. No, the truck backfired. No, so-and-so hit the table leg with their foot. While you're blaming, while you're flapping your gums blaming, the positive aspect of that is you don't have to do anything to rectify what you're blaming about. The long-term negative consequence is the milk is flowing all over the table into everybody's lap. So it's a self-defeating behavior. But no, you don't blame. Take the energy you would have put into blaming to rectify whatever it is you're blaming about. You know, rather than flapping your gums blaming, you go grab a towel and wipe up the milk before it flows in everybody's lap. That's B. C, oh, my favorite, complaining. When I used to lead ORGT backpacks, my nemesis, my greatest evil was, we called them whiny butts. Here they are backpacking along. Oh, it's too hot. Oh, we're going too fast. Oh, the trail is too steep. You know, complain. Don't be a whiny butt. Don't complain. It's a self-defeating behavior because the short-term advantage is while you're complaining, you don't have to do anything. Long-term negative consequence is whatever you're complaining about persists and creates problems for you and everybody else. No, you don't complain. You take the energy you would have put into complaining to change the circumstance about which you are complaining. You don't say, oh, it's too hot. You take off a layer of clothing. Take your water bottle and pour it over your head. You sit down and cool off. You walk more slowly, whatever. You don't complain. Use the energy to change what you're complaining about. ABC, anger, blaming, complaining. Chapter about every one in your erroneous zones. Now we get to Gone with the Wind, which is G and W. And in psychology, G and W, self-defeating behaviors, both of them, are often called opposite sides of the same temporal plane. On this side we have guilt, wasting emotional energy over something that happened in the past. And all the emotional energy we waste is not going to change it. So you say, that was dumb, and I'm not going to do it anymore, and you get on with life. On the other side of the temporal plane is W, worry. Oh, I'm so worried about next week's math quiz. No, you don't worry. You put the energy that you would have used to worry into getting ready for the math quiz. You don't worry about it. You don't be guilty. You don't worry. 5 self-defeating behaviors that happy people avoid like the plague. And again, I can't emphasize to you too much your erroneous zones in terms of a good book to help you get rid of all self-defeating behaviors. It's really cool. Then, the 10th characteristic of happy people, and the Myers-Briggs personality type comes into it again. The 10th characteristic of happy people is You got to take time to waste time. All work and no play makes the average tech student a very dull young adult. You got to do it. And your Myers-Briggs type enters into it. If your first letter is an E or an I, and the second one is an S, and the third one is a T or an F, and the fourth one is a P, you're an SP, you are a master of the use of leisure time. An SP can drop everything in the blink of an eye to go have fun. And in that sense, you're blessed. If you're an STJ or an NTJ, that combination, you've really got to schedule your leisure time. And that's where your calendar comes in. Those cells on the weekend, on Saturday and Sunday, you label them. Have fun, do nothing, hang out with friends, play Frisbee, go to a movie. And remember, 10% of your effort goes into making your calendar, 90% of the effort goes into following it. And so you get your act together and you have fun on the weekend. It's on your calendar, you do it. And it's really important. So do that. Take time to waste time. And I've been referring to the Myers-Briggs type a lot. There is a Cliff's Notes version all about the components of the Myers-Briggs type posted on the class web page. And 2 comments. One, when you did your Myers-Briggs type on that website, it will refer you to A, some general information about Myers-Briggs, but more important, B, it will refer you to several paragraphs about your type. And what's important about your type is there are what's known as caveats. They're warnings that you have to be sensitive to with your given Myers-Briggs type. It's good to know those. I'm an ENTJ, and my whole life was characterized by biting off more than I can chew. All the time, I'd bite off more than I can chew, take on more responsibility than I ever had. And when I learned my Myers-Briggs type and looked at the caveats for ENTJs, the number one caveat is, thinks he can do anything whether or not he is qualified to do so. And that was me. That was me to a T. Once I knew that, then I backed off. So there's some value in looking at your Myers-Briggs caveat. But anyway, there's a sheet on the class webpage that explains more about that. The 11th characteristic of happy people is, this is an important one, they are thankful/grateful. Thankful/grateful. And you can be thankful and grateful in 3 primary ways. And if you are thankful and grateful in all 3 of these ways, you are unique. Most people are not. But I'm sharing these with you so you can become a more thankful, grateful person in all 3 of these ways. Number 1, you're thankful to your friends and family. When was the last time you sat mom and dad down and said, Mom, Dad, thank you so much, not only for the financial support you've provided me, but also for the emotional support that you've provided me when the times got tough at Tech. And so you do that. You thank them. And it's okay to do it over and over and over again. Every time you go home, you thank them. Same for your friends. Thank you for being there for me when times were tough, when I really needed support. Number 2, if you believe in a higher power, you're thankful for the higher power, usually through prayer or meditation, for the blessings it's bestowed upon you. And number 3, and this is not intuitively obvious, you are thankful for your state of being. And this is a big deal. It's kind of like positive self-talk. You do it out loud. Remember, good things happen with your neurotransmitters when you speak rather than when you talk. You say it out loud. Thanks for your state of being. I'm so thankful I live in a free country. I don't have to worry about the Gestapo pounding on my door at midnight and dragging me off somewhere. I'm so thankful I'm economically secure that I can fork out $3 for a coffee at Starbucks occasionally. I'm economically secure. I'm so thankful that I have lots of friends, that I live in a social setting that's very pleasant. I'm so thankful that I'm good looking. These are all our state of being. And it's okay to do it over and over and over. It's okay to say the same words of thankfulness every week or every month or every day. But it's good. Remember, you say it out loud like positive self-talk. You express thankfulness for your state of being. And that adds to your being a happier person. Now, philosophically, in terms of the overall concept of happiness, it's important for you to remember the following. Do not let your doing determine your being. And I'll explain that to you. But if you let your doing determine your being, you are setting up the pins for a heap of hurt. Do not let your doing determine your being. Your being must determine your doing. Now, what does that mean? In college, one of the most blatant examples of doing determining our being is academic achievement. If I make an A on a quiz, that's doing. Then I am a worthwhile person. That's being. No. It's got to go the other way. Because I am motivated, intelligent, focused, driven, because I am all of these things, then I can do great things, like make an A on a quiz. My being drives my doing. You can see how you're setting up the pins for all this variability up and down. If I make a C on a quiz, I'm a no good, dirty louse. I make an A on a quiz, I'm worthwhile, I'm up here. I make a D, I'm a no good, dirty louse, I'm down here. So you're setting up the pins for this variable self-concept. However, if your being drives your doing, I am all these positive qualities, and I make a C on a quiz, hey, that doesn't change my being. I may make a C on a quiz, but I am still intelligent, I'm still driven, I'm still focused, I've still got all these elements of my being. That's merely a wake-up call. If I make a C on a quiz, that just says, ooh, I'm not using my talents good enough. I need to get my ass in gear and do a better job of utilizing these positive qualities that constitute my being. So you let your being drive your doing, sports fans, not the other way. You ask Susie for a date, and she says, no, I'm not going out with you. Oh, I'm a no good, dirty louse. Your doing, your asking for the date and being rejected, determined your being. I'm a no good, dirty louse. No! You look upon yourself and say, hey, I am socially skilled, I am good looking, I'm articulate, I'm fun to be with, I know how to have a good time, I am all of these things. Therefore, I ask Susie for a date, she says yes. If she says no, my being hadn't changed. I am still fun to be with, socially skilled, articulate, good looking. That hadn't changed. That's Susie's loss. She said no to going on a date with me. That's her problem. My being hadn't changed. So do that. Think about it. Let your being drive your doing. Most important. And you can see that kind of undergirds this overall philosophical approach to happiness. Boy, if you let your being drive your doing, you're setting up the pins to be a happy person. It's really good. So, what have we learned? Oh my God, we've learned a lot. This is kind of like drinking from a fire hose. But I told you up front, I apologized. This is more of a course syllabus than it is a lecture. And so many of the topics we touched on needed their own 1 hour looking into that we don't have time to do. But anyway, it's in the class notes. So what did we learn? Well, happiness is internal. And because it's internal, sports fans, we take it with us wherever we go. If you are happy in Atlanta, you'll be happy in Austin. But so is unhappiness. If you are unhappy in Chattanooga, you will be unhappy in Chicago. They are both internal, and we take them with us wherever we go. Number 2, talking about what have we learned, and this is not quite as obvious, we are free to choose. We are free to choose no matter what our genetic proclivity for happiness is. We are free to choose these 11 characteristics and become happier, or we are free to let them go. Choose to let them go and let the chips fall where they may. You are free to choose. And number 3, this is not obvious at all, but it's really important. Number 3, happiness is not a destination. It is a journey. If happiness were a destination, I'll be happy when I have $1 million. I'll be happy when I marry Susie or John. I'll be happy when I own a Mercedes. Those are all destinations. Happiness is a journey. You have these attitudes and do these behaviors throughout your life. And that's what constitutes happiness. Now, there is one destination where you will be very happy. And that destination is when you walk across the stage at the end of your tech career and receive your tech degree. You will be happy. That's the destination, but that's okay. In general, though, happiness is a journey. Now, you have 3 tasks. This is 3 tasks in addition to learning all this material for the next quiz, right? You have 3 tasks. Number 1, decide if these 11 factors will work for you. And if you scored high on the satisfaction with life scale, then the second task becomes obvious. Decide which one of them you already have. And the higher you scored, probably the more of these you already have. But you've got to do that. You've got to determine which of them you have. And the third task is you've got to decide if you want to develop the ones you don't have. And in this day and age of mental duress, it is so important, sports fans, that you develop as many of these as you can. It is distinctly to your advantage. And now remember, there's a lot of notes going to be posted on the class webpage. My email address is at the top of all of these notes, Templeton at milltemp.mindspring.com. I'm retired. I got tons of time. You can email me and we can meet for coffee and sink our intellectual teeth into any of the concepts we just brushed in this time together this morning. So you can do that. You can email me. And remember, happiness is a journey. And sports fans, if you choose this journey, take it from me, you will find worth for your life that will remain long after the last thermodynamic equation has quietly slipped away. I suggest you go for it.